Thanks for being here. You've just given a brilliant presentation, and briefly, I just wanted you to explore a bit further one of the things that you were talking about, which was innovation with your own organization. It sounds like a few years ago, you did something very brave and something quite revolutionary to the culture and the structure of your organization. Could you just talk about that for a while?
Well, what we've tried to do at GSK is to, first of all, face up to reality, which is that the rate of innovation wasn't where we wanted it to be. And then secondly, start to make the changes that we believe we ought to. Now, and the big change we've made, I think, is to say we no longer want to rely on an industrialized solution. We want to individualize R&D again, particularly in discovery. And we've started putting in place the mechanisms to allow that to happen. To be honest, at the time, it didn't feel particularly brave. I think in hindsight, it's starting to look like a bigger thing than it felt at the time.
Was it come out of necessity? Did you feel the industrial structure was just dragging, was not delivering
well,
the
I
goods?
I think the opportunity that was created is whenever you get a change in the senior leadership, it gives a chance for fresh eyes to look at a problem which perhaps has been a focus for a while. And when I came in, it really was obvious to me we needed to do something to ramp up even further our capacity here. I'd previously worked long ago in a biotech startup company, so that was quite informative for me in terms of how things really could work. Yeah, really could work. And as a result, that's what really informed the approach I wanted to take. And I didn't really feel comfortable that we had to make a choice between being big or innovative. I think you can be big and innovative.
So, at some point, informing that was this feel of the startup, the creativity, the diversity, things you... So what did you do to replicate in such a big organisation? I don't know how many employees you have?
We have 110,000, but 15,000 in R&D.
So what did you do? How did you break things up, disruptive innovation, as it were, within your own organisation?
Well, what we really used in the discovery organisation, which is what I was talking about today primarily, is we essentially, if you will, stopped the clock. We said we're going to review all of the work we're doing in discovery, called a therapy area rebalancing exercise. So we really looked again at everything we're doing. And in that process, identified where we believe the best targets for our discovery were where the lowest returning opportunities would be, so we could stop, where there might be some very exciting opportunities we weren't touching and bring those in. That was the way to, if you will, create the discontinuity. And then we created a new team approach, a new structure behind that. So it was very much focused on content of where we believed we could discover quickest, best, then okay, now let's put in place a new procedure, a new team organisation, and in the process, let's try and ditch all those things we think get in the way. So silo mentality, let's get rid of it.
Explain that just a bit.
So the notion that all the chemists operate in one organisation and have to be negotiated with to help the biologists, for example. We now organise everything around the project. So that piece of work said, here's a great project. Okay, we buy that. Now let's put in place a team, not people from silos, but a team working together, co-located to work behind it. So we got rid of that silo mentality. We said we want everybody to be co-located. So I want everybody in the organisation who's focused on that target, literally, so they can touch each other. Whereas before, some would be in Philadelphia, some would be in London. Impossible to create any kind of spark of surprise creativity.
You mentioned a great instance of that with somebody tapping somebody's shoulder, looking over for a molecule receptor.
Absolutely. Well, there's been a lot of examples. One of the things I do, of course, it's impossible to really judge until the drugs come out at the end. But one of the things I've been very focused on is I go to all of our discovery labs and just look for examples of progress, qualitative examples. And the example I used earlier today in the presentation was one where somebody had been struggling for years to find a solution, and by bringing the different skill set, the different discipline into the same environment, it created the synergy you need, because that person didn't have all the information they needed, but when you put this person with them, the answer evolved. And it's that kind of, all I can do is load the dice to improve the probability of innovation by, I think, having the smartest people, creative people in an environment where they're likely to touch each other, to spark off each other, and in an environment where they have the resources and the technologies to allow them to prosecute their ideas. And that's really what we've tried to do.
It's fascinating. You spoke very vividly about how productive and inspirational diversity and freedom is, but you also spoke to this issue of how do you organise freedom, because you've got to have your targets, you've got to be commercial. And you spoke this rather interesting thing about creating hurdles, as it were, very tough hurdles, and then leaving people alone. Right. Maybe that's a good model for the NHS. Can you just speak to that a bit?
Well,
more?
It could be. I mean, I do think that there is a real tendency and temptation for large organisations, private or public, to think that they can and should manage every single decision in an organisation. And I think what we all know when we look in the mirror is, would you like to work that way? No. Would you like to be empowered? Yes. But as a company, you're going to get anarchy if everybody can do whatever they want all the time. So I think that the compromise, and I think increasingly I feel very confident this is a good solution. The compromise is to say, at various key points, you need to understand where those key points are. You make very, very disciplined decisions. You create hurdles which are tough to jump. I don't want in that period after the hurdle anything in there which shouldn't be there. I want only high quality in there. But once you're into that zone between the hurdles, then I want you to be empowered. I allowed you in because I think you're the best scientist. I gave you the money because I think you're the best scientist. So prove to me you're the best scientist. I'm not going to do that work for you. I would only spoil what you're doing. And let them prosper in that period. Then they'll hit another hurdle. So has their discovery really got what it takes to go the next phase of development? If no, well, too bad. If yes, then we progress again. And again, you give that piece of the organization some freedom. And so you continuously try and unhook the organization from, frankly, hierarchy interference, while ensuring that nothing progresses which isn't in line with the objectives and standards of the company.
So in a way, you're building uncertainty into the process with key lock-off moments where you can check on some. Right. And in examples of how this is faring after a year of this innovation, a year or so, these are perhaps the smaller units, no silos, co-location, lots of other externalizations, I think you call them, co-developments with other small startups. How's it looking?
I mean, I think it's early days. Drug development takes a long time, so I'm not going to claim that we've got 20 new drugs in the last year. But we are beginning to see an increase in the number and quality, I believe, of the molecules that we're discovering. More importantly and qualitatively, I see our organization finding it much easier to work with and attract in other scientists from outside, academics for it, which is critical, and also biotech, entrepreneurial type scientists. So that for me tells me that we've broken down a lot of that barrier which existed before. That's a key sign. I'm seeing problems being solved which weren't previously being solved, and I'm seeing morale go up inside that organization with our scientists. I'm also frankly seeing a new generation of scientists prosper. So I'm seeing a new group come through. Now, will it ultimately deliver the end goal? We'll have to wait and see. But I feel more confident today than I did when we started that we're in the right direction.
The indicators are good. Well, good luck with that. And just sort of finally, given that this is focused on innovation in the NHS and healthcare delivery in general, having interfaced for many years with NHS and many other healthcare authorities or governments or private healthcare across the world, what lessons have you drawn from your own internal revolution or evolution, which you think, just glimpsing from the outside, not saying anything to any chief executives or anything, could actually be taken forward on a larger scale throughout NHS organisation?
Well, first of all, I think there should be a total obsession with quality. So we're trying to ensure that every medicine we develop really delivers value at the end of the day. And that's really one of our drivers. So I think one of the things I'd say is we've got to make sure the fixation is on the quality of the outcome for the patient. That has to be the number one objective, first of all. Secondly, in terms of innovation, I think it's terribly important that the NHS doesn't adopt a convoy approach whereby it moves at the pace of the slowest. It needs to allow, maybe letting 1,000 flowers bloom is a little too anarchic, but there are clearly pockets of real excitement and energy inside the NHS. And I hope very much they're allowed to flourish in whatever direction they're trying to go. And then the NHS is smart enough to realise that that example of excellence which grew up somewhere could now be replicated. So allowing that, the leading edge to develop and then be copied, rather than holding everybody back until the bureaucracy decides what the right answer is, I think is a terribly important skill to have. I think the NHS has that, but it's important not to lose it, and if anything, to further exacerbate it, so that you can be more assured that you're seeing better interaction between, for example, patient-facing professionals, other researchers, managers in the organisation to deliver real quality improvement for patients. That's the kind of thing I think they ought to focus on.
Excellent. Andrew, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Excellent interview.
Thanks.
And great presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, and it's a pleasure
and yours.
to come.
And you must be busy, I bet. You're flying off again.